Yep, we're all good to go now.
Thank you, Mr. Goodger. Good afternoon, and I would like to welcome everyone to this licensing subcommittee being held on the 30th of August 2020. My name is Councillor Sandra Forrest. I will be chairing the meeting this afternoon, and I start the meeting with the following announcement. This virtual meeting is being live streamed as a public meeting. It will also be recorded and the recording subsequently made available via the council's website. As a public meeting, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting, and the use of any such images or recordings is not under the council's control. Please note that members of the public viewing the meeting via the live stream can only see the person who is speaking. Also, that it takes a second or so for Zoom to switch view to that person when they begin speaking. Participants should please ensure that their microphone is muted when they are not speaking. Thank you. I will now confirm those who are present, and I will ask everyone, particularly the borough councillors, to confirm verbally that they are present and that they can see and hear the proceedings. I start with myself as chair, and I confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings. Councillor Popley, will you confirm, please, that you can see and hear the proceedings, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can both hear and see the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ranson, will you also confirm, please, that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. And Councillor Paling, will you also confirm, please, that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Chair, I can see and hear the proceedings, and I will now, as reserve member, switch to mute.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paling. I will explain that Councillor Paling is a reserve member of the subcommittee. Reserve members are listed to ensure a meeting is quorate should a member of the subcommittee be unable to attend at short notice. Where all three subcommittee members are present, any reserve member in attendance acts only as an observer. Thank you. I will ask each officer and then others to confirm verbally that they are present and that they can hear the proceedings. May I start with Mr. Matt Goodger, Information and Development Manager, please?
Yes, Chair, I can both hear and see the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Karen Widdowson, Democratic Services Manager.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can hear and see proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nikki Conway, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Ms. Lisa Gilligan of Freed Solicitors, who is acting as legal advisor to the subcommittee.
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you, Ms. Gilligan. Ms. Nicola Ford, Principal Officer at Charnwood Borough Council, dealing with housing and litigation. Ms. Ford, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Ms. Grace Dowson, Licensing Manager for Charnwood Borough Council.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. And Ms. Rachel Kluwer, Licensing Officer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here and can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. And now others. Will you please, when I read your name, would you please confirm that you are present and that you can see and hear? Mr. Richard Langham, please.
Yep, I can see and hear everything okay.
Thank you. And I believe, Mr. Langham, that you have a colleague with you, Mr. John Langham.
No, it's John Smith, actually, Chair.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have got it written down. I do apologise, Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'm here as a director of the hotel and I can see and hear the proceedings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And then objectors, Mr. Cam Wild.
Yes, Chair, I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Mr. Christopher Hackworth. Mr. Christopher Hackworth.
Sorry.
Mr. Hackworth, can you see and hear the proceedings?
Yes, I can, if I can.
Mr. Hackworth, I will come back to you.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we have Ms. Diane Thornton, please?
Yes, you have Diane and Guy Thornton. We're both here and we can see and hear the meeting.
Thank you very much indeed. Returning to you, Mr. Hackworth, can you see and hear the proceedings?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Yes, sorry, it was muted before. Yes, I can see and hear.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Right, I now come to item 1, interests. I ask members of the subcommittee, that is Councillor Popley, Councillor Ransom. I ask you to confirm that you are not aware of any interest or other reason that might prejudice the ability to hold a fair hearing and make a sound determination of the matters to be considered. Councillor Popley, Councillor Ransom, do you have any interests or other reasons that disqualifies you from continuing?
No, Chair.
No, Chair.
Thank you. And I confirm that I have no interests or other reason which might prejudice my ability to carry on. Item 2, introductions and procedure for the meeting. Right. Now all parties have been introduced at the start of the meeting when we confirmed who was present. I ask all parties to confirm that they are happy for the procedure for the meeting to be taken as read, as this was included with the agenda papers. Is any party not happy to take these procedures as read?
Chair, can I just mention one item I'd like to raise, which is more to do with the process of consultation rather than the actual events at the hotel. I wondered when would be the best time to raise that.
Is this Mr. Smith speaking, please?
No, it's Mr. Hackworth.
Mr. Hackworth. Mr. Hackworth, you will have the opportunity to raise that as the meeting progresses.
Even if it's to do with the process rather than the substance of the application.
Well, I'm going to ask our legal advisor. Ms. Gilligan, could you advise me, please?
I think when the licensing officer goes through her report, she will outline the statutory procedures that were followed. And I think at that point, if Mr. Hackworth has any questions he wishes to raise in terms of procedural requirements not being complied with, the legal officer will be able to confirm whether or not in the authority's position, whether or not in the authority's view, all the procedural requirements have been met.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so apart from that, will those present confirm to me that they are now happy for me to proceed with this meeting? Anyone, any objections? Thank you. Then I will carry on. Item 3, application to vary a premises license under the Licensing Act of 2003, Quorn Grange Hotel, 88 Wood Lane, Quorn. And I call upon our licensing manager, Grace Dowson, to present her report, please. Ms. Dowson.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a variation to the existing premises licence at the Quorn Grange Hotel. 16 representations from local residents have been received. As a result of the representations being received, this matter must now be determined by the Council's Licensing Subcommittee under Section 35(3)(a) of the Licensing Act 2003. The Quorn Grange Hotel has held a premises licence, Prem number Prem 5696, since September 2005. The current licence is attached to Appendix 1 at page 8 of the report. The proposed variation is to update the hotel layout and plans to include a new 25-bedroom wing. The application was submitted by premises licence holder Richard Langham on the 10th of June 2020 and is attached to Appendix 2 on page 19 of the subcommittee report. The new plans are attached to Appendix 11 at page 200, along with the current plan and site area plan. The new plan shows that the outdoor area has been extended and includes an area for the performance of plays and live music. Clarification was sought by the licensing section from the applicant as to the licensable activities proposed outside. Under the existing licence for the premises, the performance of plays is allowed indoors and outdoors, whilst the live music was for indoors only. Through an email trail dated the 15th of June 2020, which is attached to Appendix 3, page 39 of the report, the applicant confirmed that the live music to be held outside would be held under the Live Music Act, where an audience does not exceed 500 and is held between the hours of 8 and 2300 hours. Therefore, the variation application is not to add live music outside. The application was advertised in accordance with the provisions of the Licensing Act regulations. A copy of the required blue notice and newspaper advertisement is attached to Appendix 4 on page 43 of the subcommittee report. As stated earlier, 16 representations have been received from local residents, and these are included at Appendix 6 on page 51 onwards of the subcommittee report. The representations have been made on the grounds of the following licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, and the prevention of public nuisance. No representations have been received from any of the responsible authorities. Comments from Charnwood's Environmental Health section are attached to Appendix 7. The areas for consideration by the subcommittee are the application for a variation of a premises licence, the representations received from the local residents, whether or not the application should be varied, and the conditions to be attached to the varied premises licence if granted. The parties to the hearing are the applicant, Richard Langham, joined by John Smith. The interested parties are the local residents. And when carrying out its functions, the subcommittee must have regard to A, the statement of the Charnwood Council Statement of Licensing Policy, and B, the amended guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 by the Secretary of State. The licensing policy is attached to Appendix 8. The relevant parts of the 182 guidance are attached to Appendix 9. The parties may refer to the policy and guidance during the hearing. Finally, when considering the matters before you, the subcommittee must have regard to the licensing objectives, and these should be the primary focus of all discussions today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dowson. Right. Now then, Councillor Popley and Councillor Ranson, are you happy for me now to ask other parties if they wish to question the licensing manager? the subcommittee will have the opportunity in a few moments. You happy for me to continue, Councillor Ranson, Councillor Popley?
Yes, Chair.
I'm happy for you to continue, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, may I ask Mr. Langham, the applicant, do you have any questions that you wish to ask Ms. Dowson, the licensing manager?
Nothing from me, Council.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, is there anything that you would like to ask at this stage?
Not at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to ask the objectors. First of all, Mr. Wild, do you have any questions, Mr. Wild, that you would like to ask of our licensing manager?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Thornton and Mr. Thornton, do you have any questions that you would like to ask of the licensing manager?
Yes, please, Chair. There's 4 questions that I had. I've made reference to the pages in the package that was sent through. On page 16, there's reference to the premises being secluded. It's not secluded. We regularly hear events going on from our home. Second question, on page 34, paragraph D, there's reference to us being informed about music and firework events, and in 20 years, well, 21 years of living here, we've never been informed about any music or fireworks taking place. And right, on page 39, there's reference to the music performance outdoors, the email correspondence, and apparently it requires local authority consent. If that could be clarified as to what that entails and whether local residents are given any opportunity to have a say in that. And finally, on page 195.47a, I would be interested to hear whether the licensing authority has received a noise impact assessment as detailed in the paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to Mr. Hackworth, but Ms. Dawson, would you like to respond at this stage to Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, please?
Yes, I can certainly, Chair. If I take the same 4 points in the same order as you've raised them, Mr. Thornton, the premises is not secluded. On page 16, that's actually under the current license, which has been in place since 2005. Unfortunately, looking at the paperwork, it doesn't appear that Mr. Langham was the licensee at that point. So unfortunately, I can't really say whether that was an adequate description or not in 2005, but that is on the existing license currently. In respect of the 20 years of living near to the premises and not having been informed of music or fireworks, we might be in a better position to hear from the applicant himself in respect of that, but in time, that's on the new application, and that appears to be something that is offered forward in their new schedule, which would imply that they are going to communicate more with the local residents. And again, Mr. Langham may be able to expand on that when he gives his presentation. In respect of the variation application and the music performance outdoors, I do have to express an apology on this. Unfortunately, I'm not sure where my colleague who sent the email had the word consent from. Unfortunately, under the Live Music Act, it was brought in as a deregulation of the existing licensing act. So it's meant to be a less red tape sort of way of the managers of premises hospitality wise to have these events without consent from either ourselves or local residents. However, as our legal officer will expand on, and I'm sure the applicant will, things can be taken into account when considering those live music events. In respect to the noise impact assessment on page 195, that's actually out from the local model conditions that we allow and offer out for people within the hospitality trade to include as a condition if they wish to. It gives them an idea of the sort of things that the licensing authority may be looking at. It can also be used by the members at different hearings should they wish to look at the sort of conditions that they can add on to a hearing, a license that's come to the hearing. So that's an option, but it's not actually a requirement of any of the premises. Okay, I hope that answers your questions, Mr. Thornton.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I now return to you, Mr. Hackworth, for if you have any questions for Ms. Dawson, I beg your pardon, our licensing manager. Mr.
Yes.
Hackworth, please.
I have 3 questions about the proposal and one about the process, as we agreed. The 2 questions about the proposal, referring to Appendix 2 in the submission for the hotel, from the hotel, under the section, the prevention of public nuisance, there is no mention about noise limitation measures, as mentioned in Appendix 10, page 195. When did Charnwood last inspect the premises to ensure noise limiting measures are in place and are operating effectively? The second question relates to fireworks. What are the requirements for firework displays? Are there any conditions, for example, notifying local residents? And the question about the process. This relates to one of my neighbours, Mike Curtis, who lives at number 33 Northwich Close, which happens to be the closest house in our road to the hotel. At the moment, he's seriously ill with a life-threatening illness, and he's been shielding since March. He was aware of the application because one of our neighbours put a notice through his front door, and he sent a letter to Charnwood District Council, which unfortunately arrived just before the deadline. One of the staff at the licensing department telephoned to say that they'd received the letter, but then advised him that the letter would not be taken into account because Mike didn't complete the proper form for the submission of a complaint. Unfortunately, the member of staff at the licensing section of the district council didn't ask any questions as to why he sent a letter. And this, I think, was very unfortunate because it meant that he was disenfranchised from the process. He doesn't have a computer. Because he's shielding, he can't go to the local library. He can't use the telephone to give a response because that's not acceptable. So he was disenfranchised. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the district council and to perhaps raise this as something that needs to be taken into account in the future. I know that shielding has now stopped, but it could well come back again in the future. It seems unfortunate that Mr. Curtis has been excluded from this consultation. So those are the 3 points I wanted to raise.
Thank you, Mr. Hackworth. I'm going to ask Ms. Dawson to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hackworth, in respect of the noise limiting device, which you referred to on page 195, that's similar to the issue that I discussed with Mr. Thornton in the fact that that is a part of the model conditions and isn't a requirement for each applicant to include it. It is something that our environmental health teams worked closely with premises, and if it's required in the future, should any noise complaints be received, then they would work closely with the premises if required. In respect of the fireworks, it's not a licensable issue under ourselves, but it would well be that they would talk to, again, the EP team because of the noise issue, which is environmental protection. In respect of Mr. Curtis, we have got some notes to say he said that he had been made aware of similar reps which would be raised at the hearing. He was happy because similar reps had been received that his letter would not be taken into account, and he would like to be contacted after the hearing to be informed of the decision, which we have got details of his address to send that to. Unfortunately, the Licensing Act is very prescriptive, and we have a 28-day consultation period, and those that were to be received outside of that period or not received in the manner that we would state can be asked to be repeated or refused if outside the time period.
Right. I mean, the reason I mentioned about the noise is because it clearly from the responses has been an issue for local residents. So we'll obviously come back to that. Thank you for the note about the letter. Do you think there's any need to do anything more than that generally? Because it is a problem for people shielding.
I appreciate that each problem is in its own case and merits to be looked at. Unfortunately, like I say, the Act is very prescriptive, and in respect to the 28 days, we can't alter that. Certainly, if Mr. Curtis had wanted his letter to be considered, we could have certainly taken his concerns into account. But on being advised that there was other reps, he seemed quite happy to be able that those reps covered his concerns. But like I say, every case is dealt with on its own merit. Ultimately, if they're outside the 28 days, which I accept Mr. Curtis was a different matter, then we wouldn't be able to take them. And that is the law, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Thank you. I come now then, moving on. Could I ask our legal advisor, Ms. Gilligan, if she has any questions that she wishes to ask our licensing manager, please?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now I ask members of the subcommittee if they have any questions they wish to ask the licensing manager. Councillor Ranson, please.
Thank you, Chair. The one thing I would like to ask the actual, with the variation of licensing and the application, the applicant has applied for extra up to 500 people to be outside in a environment in that location to do with music. How can we, what way forward is that? Is that permissible, or can we actually, because they've got a license to go indoors, music indoors to a certain period of time and certain criteria to that period of time, like windows and things like that have got to be closed. How do we stand as a council and ourselves to actually, if we were in mind to give permission for the extra legality, the legal member to legally give permission for outside up to 500 people and strobe lighting? I just want to know, I've just been, you know, it's a bit concerning for the residents and for anybody else. Can I actually, am I within my rights to ask this? I'm finished.
Right.
Yes, Councillor Ranson. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over it. As a part of the deregulatory changes, which were by the government to make sure that the hospitality trade had sort of a lesser red tape approach towards these events, one of the things that was deregged as such was the live music. No licence permission is required. So a performance of amplified live music between 8 and 2300 hours on any day on any premises authorised to sell alcohol for consumption on those premises between the hours of 8 and 2300 hours on any day, provided the audience does not exceed 500. So unfortunately, from a small pub to such as a hotel can sort of do that without an application to ourselves. That is unfortunately where the noise team come in, and if there is complaints and concerns about the noise, then it is the noise team, environmental protection, that would be looked at or spoken to. And as you can see at one of the appendices of the report, the noise team have been in touch with the applicant and have asked that certain things are taken into account. Unfortunately, it is very much a case that if the premises and the residents experience noise, then the residents can complain to the EP, the environmental protection team, in respect of noise, and there is the opportunity to come back for a review against any license once issued, and noise complaints can be one of those reasons. And if there is registered noise complaints with the noise team, then they can support that review, as can any other RA.
Chair, can I ask just another question?
Certainly.
If this is very much of a, I'm throwing it into the pond type of thing. Can we not put conditions on that the venue for the vendor can actually have within, so many venues per year within that remit of that condition? Do you understand where I'm coming from? So actually, can we not put a condition in that you can have two outside things a year or not? I'm just trying to put clarity in my own brain. If we put a condition in that, say we were of a minded to actually say, well, yes, you can actually do this, but you have only got two, you're going to do it twice a year.
Does Lisa want to comment on that?
Sorry, I'm asking. I'm sorry, but I need to know for clarity.
In terms of the deregulation, it's supposed to be completely unfettered, because live music was previously a regulated activity. The deregulation takes it outside of the Licensing Act completely. If there are concerns based on noise nuisance, then it is open, as Grace has touched upon, it's open to local residents, or indeed any responsible authority, to apply for a review, bringing to the Licensing Committee's attention evidence of the undermining of the prevention of public nuisance. As a starting point, the Live Music Act doesn't allow you to attach conditions, and any conditions which are currently on the licence related to noise would not count between the hours of 8 and 11. But after the deregulation comes into force, if there are concerns and if there is evidence, then interested parties can apply for review, bring all of that evidence to the Licensing Committee's attention. The Licensing Committee can then impose conditions on the entertainment which was previously deregulated between the hours of 8 AM and 11 PM, based upon the evidence they're hearing about alleged or evidence of noise nuisance. So in terms of the deregulation, the simplest way to put it is the starting point is it's unfettered. But if there are then, if concerns, if then evidence comes to light, once premises take advantage of the Live Music Act, then interested parties have the opportunity to come back and say, bring it all to your attention, and then at that review you are given enhanced powers, if you like, enhanced statutory provision to attach conditions based upon the evidence you've heard about noise nuisance between the hours of 8 AM and 2300.
So, Lisa, can I just query that? The fact is that they're at liberty to have music between 8 AM and 1100 hours, yes? And that if they go over that, then it's the only time that anybody, residents or anyone, can actually can query it, and it would have to come back to the committee, yes? Am I clear on that? But at this moment in time, we could not put any sort of conditions in. It's not within the remit of the Act. Am I right?
No, because it's seen as unfettered and automatic grant with each and every premises license. So basically, not just these premises, each and every premises that are currently licensed to sell alcohol get this automatically by virtue of the Live Music Act.
So we could not even put a caveat in, say that the vendor has got to notify the surrounding location people that this is going to happen.
Well, I think, I mean, obviously the applicant's going to get the opportunity to speak, and I don't want
Yeah.
to preempt anything.
Yeah. But you can understand what I'm asking.
Yeah. I believe within the application that is mentioned within the operating schedule or something, and that is a condition which, well, I don't know whether that's a condition. Which
Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Yeah. Is anything else, Councillor Ransom? Because
no, I think I've had, no, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Councillor Poplar, oh gosh. Councillor Poplar, please. Do you have any questions for our licensing officer?
Thank you, Chair. It's only one, and it just alludes to a point that Grace made earlier. Can we just have it categorically confirmed that, I think it's on page 196, in relation to fireworks and stuff, anything like that would have to go through our authority and have to be prior consent for that to happen. It couldn't just be a sporadic thing. It'd have to be all confirmed above board. That's how I understand it. Point X1 and X11 as well. I am clarifying that correctly, aren't I, Grace? That's the only thing I want to ask you.
I don't think at this moment in time they have to have, they certainly don't require our permission from a licensing point of view for fireworks. I'm not sure if they require EP. I mean, any fireworks that are bought have to be bought through a recognised licensed vendor through trading standards. But I think page 195 is additional conditions that can be added. And local conditions that we use. So I'm not aware that we actually need to give permission for fireworks events.
Okay, Grace, thank you. It's just how that reads that could be misinterpreted, I think. And that's just one thing I want to clarify. Apart from that, though, there's no other questions I've got. Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Popley. May I just ask, just for clarification, if someone comes along and wants to have a wedding reception and they want to go on with music and dancing until say 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, or someone wants to come along and hold a ball or something at the hotel, if the music goes on after 11, great, Ms. Dowson, would they then need a permit, a license, permission?
Yes, they would require anything outside of the live music regs. They would require a license for that.
Thank you. So if someone comes along and says, I want to do a Christmas ball, it's going to New Year's Eve. I want the music, the dancing to go on till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. They have to have a license. They have to have a permit. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Dowson, for your explanations. I come on to item G, and I'm going to ask the applicant to present his application. So, Mr. Langham, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, back in 2019, we were asked to submit a variation of our license due to the new extension to the hotel. The application was submitted, but it was declined based on the last GM's failing to put information into the public space with the newspaper and the blue notices. The general manager at the time left, so he left at the start of lockdown, and I was approached by the licensing section to basically start the process again, which we did. Before that could happen, I had to assign myself as the personal license holder, a premises license, and then DPS. Everything that we've done has been in line with what the council have requested us to do with the blue notices and the newspaper adverts. As you can see on the Appendix 11, you can see the original plans of the hotel compared to the new plans with the extensive new block of bedrooms at the back there. We added on a section which is already existing in the garden, which is the performance of play and live music area in the garden. From what we understood, that we could do the performance of live play in the garden under the current license, However, if we wanted to have our calendar events such as Shakespeare in the Garden, the acoustic live music wouldn't suffice to be able to play to the crowd. So adding on the live amplified music of acoustic music would be required. Talking about some of the representations, John Smith, the director, will touch on this a little later as a company director. We've already had the conversations as a board of directors and said the fireworks issue. So we've discussed that. That is, all the fireworks displays that have happened in the past at the hotel have been organised by bridal parties or birthday parties or whatever. It was not directly organised by the hotel. Since going through this license application, the directors have officially banned fireworks from the hotel. As we're not hugely keen on disrupting the locals as much as it has done, and we are significantly aware that it is an issue. So they have actively said that we will ban firework, anything for a party, New Year's Eve, whatever consideration that is. Answering the question earlier about talking to locals, the last general manager wasn't so keen on spreading the message of love, let's say that. So we've got more plans of using Nextdoor Quorn social media app to let guests and locals know what's going on. The same as using Facebook, and then some local leaflet drops as well to the immediate roads and what's going on. In terms of some of the representations talking about the road, it was part of the planning application that we did a survey, traffic survey, which was included in that application for the new builds and the extension that we did. So that was already considered with that. In my 7 years of working at the hotel, I've never had an experience of an accident related to our driveway. Looking to the left, there's 300 yards, and if you look to the right, there's 100 yards worth of visibility. So for me, I've not seen or had any issues relating to traffic. With the new build that we did, we added significant number of parking spaces. I know one of the concerns of people on Northwich Close was cars parking on their close, which was a completely valid concern. However, we have over 95 parking spaces now, and around the theatre garden area, which we're part of the proposed license variation, we had ground reinforcement included into the ground to enable another 250 cars parked on there. That was just because with the building work, the extension took out the use of the car park, so we had to put provisions on otherwise. So in terms of parking space, we have more than ample space. In terms of what we propose the event area to be used for, it's simply not music festivals. We're not looking to hold Woodstock or Download. We're not looking to do anything like that. The simple idea is Shakespeare in the Garden, like a folk festival event. In the past, we've had jazz barbecues in the garden. So we're not looking to do a music festival. It's not in the consideration. No strobe lighting, no fireworks. I know there's been issues in the past. We've had events in the garden. There was something called the Next Festival, which was a corporate party, which was on a Thursday night, and of course significant disruption to the locals. So it was a corporate event. It wasn't a hotel event. They booked it, and it kind of exceeded what we expected, but that was back in 2014 under a different management. What I would like to do is pass over to John Smith as a hotel director to give a little bit more information.
Yes, sorry, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Just let me ask, Councillor Ransom, Councillor Popley, I have no objection to Mr. Smith speaking to us. Do either of you have an objection?
No, Chair, I'm quite happy.
Thank you. Councillor Popley.
So just to confirm again, no, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, then over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief. Just to back up what Richard Langham has said, the directors took a decision recently, the meeting before last, that there would be no fireworks, whether this is a private event, a corporate event, a wedding or a hotel event. And that includes November the 5th and New Year's Eve. So it's a blanket, as Richard said, ban on firework displays. And also, if clients want to use elaborate transport like a helicopter, which has been mentioned, they won't be able to. The directors won't give permission for that unless there are extenuating circumstances, and it's an air ambulance or something. Then of course, you know, the common sense will prevail. Also, we're not planning events every day or even every week. These events will be few and far between. We haven't got a number yet to give you, but I think we are willing to impose limits, have our self-imposed limits. We also will, when it's live music, we'll look at the decibel level and make sure that's measured and kept within what reasonable limits we can, and we'll insist on that. And the music that we're mainly talking about at the moment will be incidental music to the play. So if there's a Shakespeare play, there may be some music for scene changes and that kind of thing, but it won't be long performances. Long performances, if we do have them, will be by, and we're talking about the genres of folk and jazz, and we won't be going late into the evening for practical purposes, if nothing else. At the moment, we're thinking of events that will be during the hours of daylight, particularly the plays, because we hope to attract family audiences to that. And also you get other on costs if you go into the night. So that's not part of our plans at present. And I can't see that will change in the near future. So I think that's maybe enough from me on behalf of the directors, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Now, Subcommittee, Councillor Ransom, Councillor Popley, are you happy that I should go on to other parties asking questions of both Mr. Langham and Mr. Smith? Are you happy I should do that?
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you. Right, we start then with interested parties. That is the objectors, Mr. Wilde, Mr. Hackworth, Ms. Thornton and Mr. Thornton, to ask any questions of the applicant. So can we start with Mr. Wilde, please? Mr. Wilde, do you have any questions of Mr. Langham or Mr. Smith, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's difficult because on the one hand, I completely understand that the licensing is deregulated. And I suppose the problem I've got, or the issue I've got here, is that I suppose we're taking it on trust that these will be relatively low-key, small events during the daytime, no fireworks. However, within the licensing constraints, unless everybody complains if something happens, there's nothing really that I suppose the hotel could do what it wanted to do. So I suppose we're taking it on trust that you would go with that. If there were any conditions that could be attached to the license, so it was that there were shorter hours that the events could take place in, that there were to be no fireworks, I think I'd go away sort of quite happy with that. I suppose that what gives me concern is in page 34 of the document, it was section D, it was about prevention of public nuisance. So the mitigations that are in there at present, any event that requires musical fireworks outside must have a submitted request. But then Mr. Smith just said, actually, we're not going to do fireworks. I'd be interested to know whether the minutes from the board meeting would show that that decision was taken prior to the application being submitted. So that's a bit of a concern, because as one of my neighbours, I think it's Mr. Thornton, mentioned, in the years that he's lived here, he's never had any notification of fireworks. We've been here 4 years and ditto. It's the fact that I think the application is very much talking about what we've done in the past. And clearly that hasn't happened. So I've got a note of concern there. Similarly, good relationships with neighbours and communicating well. I know there's the bare necessity of what you've got to do in terms of an application. So it went to the local press. We don't read a local paper. If it wasn't for a local neighbour putting a slip through doors, we wouldn't have even known the application was going forward. The application is basically on the front gate of the hotel, unless you've got reason to pass by that gate, and you wouldn't, because the footpath disappears soon after, unless you go into the Lafarge premises. basically, unless you're a guest or an employee of the hotel, you wouldn't have really known. It was just pure chance that somebody had seen that and then told the neighbours. And if that hadn't have happened, there wouldn't have been 16 representations. So I've got my concerns really about, it's about trust, and it's about what's been put in there as a mitigation about communicating with the community, which hasn't happened to date, and the no fireworks rule, which there's no evidence of telling people in advance. I appreciate what Mr. Langham said about trying to sort of sharpen up how you engage with the local population. But again, we're being asked to take something on trust, which at the moment the evidence is lacking. As a busy working parent with 3 kids, I don't really want to go on social media just to work out whether I need to close my windows at the weekend coming. So I'd want a little bit better than that. Leaflet drops, fine. But again, it's about trust. And that's really where my concern lies. And that's probably very hard to legislate for. If there could be some conditions attached to the licence about what Mr. Smith and Mr. Langham have said, that would please me and probably some of my neighbours greatly. I'll shut up now. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wild. I'm going to take all the questions from the objectors, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Langham and Mr. Smith to respond. So thank you, Mr. Wild. Mr. Hackworth, please.
Mr. Wild has actually covered the points that I was going to raise. It was really around that Appendix 2, which Mr. Langham did complete, where he says we have a good relationship with neighbours and communicate well. The thing I'd like to know is where's the evidence for that? Because as Mr. Wild has said, and also Mr. Thornton as well, we haven't had any evidence of that at all locally for years and years. And similarly about the fireworks, it says that you do notify residents. How? Now, given that, I mean, I'm very pleased about what Mr. Langham has said about fireworks. I think that's helpful. But given that he completed this form, you know, he must have some evidence to support what he said. So I'd like to hear his thoughts on that.
Thank you, Mr. Hackworth. Ms. Thornton, Mr. Thornton, do you have any questions of the applicant, please?
No additional questions to the other objectors. I really concur with what they're saying. It is really about having some sort of comfort that the future changes are there for good and are going to hold. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the objectors. I'm going to return to Mr. Langham and Mr. Smith for their responses to the questions and comments that have been raised by the objectors, please. Mr. Langham.
Thanks all for the comments. Trust is a massive issue and we are aware of it. I mean, taking over from the previous general manager, which was the start of lockdown, he left straight away. Everything that happened before March this year was a different management system. Everything that's happened afterwards since March is moving forward into the new management. We've just taken on a new general manager, Andrea O'Dwyer. She started with us last week. I believe she is watching in on YouTube at the moment. Speaking to Tom the farmer next door to us from their Woodside farm, we have a text message relationship where we talk about the fireworks in the event, so he's very aware, and we have a reciprocal relationship with him where he comes and brings horses onto the meadow at the back of our hotel, and he'll then mow the lawns and take the hay to feed the animals. So there's a good working relationship with the neighbour there. I had several phone calls over lockdown in relation to the conifers at the back of the hotel along Unit Road. I think it was 5 different people I'd spoken to about that, and all were very, very receptive of the conversation we had. And again, I really do appreciate when we talk about trust. And during the application, back in, I think it was May, we hadn't had the conversation about fireworks. It was subsequently when the representations were shared with us that we realised how significant of an issue it was to the local community. So after having those representations, we put it to the directors, and the directors rightly said that we should stop the fireworks.
Thank you, Mr. Langham. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, do you have anything you would like to add?
Just to confirm that, Chair, that when the directors saw the objections, there was quite a surprise. The directors, you'll appreciate, aren't hands-on and don't know what happens at every event, but we're quite surprised at the firework issue. And that's why it was quite easy for us as a board of directors to say no. And I can actually give categoric assurances that that's what the decision of the directors. And that won't be reversed in the near future. And if it is reversed, there'll be a consultation. I can assure you about that as well. We want to build up trust with the neighbourhood. And we sincerely hope the new general director, as Mr. Langham has just said, who's now taken up appointment, will be doing that. We have to rebuild the hotel business because of lockdown and everything from the start. And we hope that it's going to be a hope for the community, and we hope people are going to enjoy what's put on, and it's not going to cause any aggravation to the general public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Could I ask our legal advisor, please, if Ms. Gilligan has any questions she wishes to ask the applicant, please?
I suppose in terms of assisting the licensing committee, having heard from the applicant in terms of no fireworks, no helicopters, whether those are matters which they would be willing to offer as conditions on the license.
If I may, Chair, yes, we would.
Ms. Gilligan?
No further questions. No further questions.
Thank you very much indeed. And can we come to Ms. Dowson, please, our licensing manager? Ms. Dowson, do you have any questions you wish to ask the applicant, please?
No, I don't, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dowson. Councillor Popley, Councillor Ranson, do you have any questions that you wish to ask the applicant, please? Councillor Popley.
I do, Chair. I've just got one. It alludes to the fact what Mr. Langham said regarding these plays and the folk festivals. On page 41, there's an email correspondence that's been referred to already. And I note there's a sentence in there that says you have a good relationship with local theatre groups. Now, I know you've said you'd probably go down the Shakespearean line, but as a musical theatre buff myself as well, I can't help but notice how rich we are around here for great theatre groups. And my worry is that perhaps some of the theatre groups might get the idea that they can go and do an open air theatre production at some point in the future, which will then disrupt the locality. And I wondered how the mindset is regarding that, if that's something that will be offered or if that's something that might be thought about. But if it is, I just want some sort of thoughts on that potential area from the applicant. Thank you.
Mr. Langham, Mr. Smith?
So working with local theatre groups such as Banner, I'm sure you're aware of Banner Theatre and things like that. In the past, we have done things in the garden before. We're quite confident that everything that we do in the gardens can be managed very easily and very well with the experience in event holding that we do have. The hotel is owned by the General Federation of Trade Unions Education Trust. So there are real strong links, particularly with the music unions and different organisations around the arts and culture there as well, that can really assist us with those things.
Thank you, Mr. Langham. It's just, I say it's this noise level thing again. With the play, for instance, as we all appreciate, the spoken word's a lot more softer, isn't it? But when you've got live band and all the rest of it, that's my only concern regarding letting out the theatre groups, perhaps, because everybody wants to be entertained and they want to have a decent performance. But if you've got a 20-line chorus regalia and an orchestra that's playing everything that you want to sing along to, it's going to be a lot noisier than a Shakespeare play. But that's just my only thought on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ransom, please. Do you have any questions of the applicant, please?
No, Chair, all my answers have been answered. All my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we come to item M, where we ask the interested parties, that is to say the objectors, to present their representations, please. So, Mr. Wild, may we start with you, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think I've probably already got my money's worth. Thank you. I'd just repeat what I've put in section D about prevention of noise public nuisance. I'm sort of satisfied with the applicant's answers to that. In terms of the fireworks, that's great. If that could be a licensing condition, that's great. The time of the events, again, as Councillor Popley's just mentioned, it doesn't really matter whether it's folk, jazz or death metal. If it's loud, it's loud. And if it's not to your taste, it's not particularly what you're going to want to hear on a summer's evening. If there is a curfew time that can be put in as a condition, if it is about plays, then I wouldn't expect them to be going on until 2300 hours with 20 minutes drinking up time. I'd probably expect a play to be finishing at what, 9, 10 o'clock, 10:30. So if there could be a licensing condition attached to it, that would be, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wild. Mr. Hackworth, please.
Yeah, I'll just briefly restate what is in my submission. We are concerned about live music, whether it's amplified or not. It could be very intrusive. I hear what Mr. Langham has said, and I welcome what he said, but I am concerned still about it. The map that was provided by the hotel didn't show the roads near to the hotel. And I can assure the councillors that the roads are very close to the hotel, within eyesight of the hotel. You can see from the responses to the indoor music that concerns have been raised quite substantially by the respondents. And that it's really on the evidence of that I'm concerned about the outside music that might take place and the extent to which it could be intrusive. The other point I wanted to raise, which has been covered earlier, is about the traffic. And Mr. Langham has said he doesn't have experience of it being a problem, but certainly looking at the traffic coming down Wood Lane, sometimes it exceeds the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. It is a concern of the parish council that traffic in Wood Lane is, first of all, fast and has grown considerably because of local developments. And the fact that the hotel could potentially have lots of people coming out of the hotel late at night, I think is a concern. And the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, if you're coming from Quorn, is before the hotel. So traffic coming or going are within the unrestricted time speed of 70 miles an hour. Now, I know this isn't a direct concern of childhood, but I do think it's something that could be related to the appropriate authorities to be taken into account so that we slow down the traffic coming down the lane and make it safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hackworth. Mr. Thornton, would you like to present your representation, please?
Well, again, I think a lot of it has already been covered, but just to confirm that our particular concern was the prevention of public nuisance. We were concerned about the fireworks because obviously in the time that we've lived here, there has been considerable fireworks and without warning, which was an issue, particularly when we had pets, young children and school-age children, and that was a big concern. And I guess it's also that if we've got live music going on, particularly things like midweek, again, it needs to be considerate of the fact that there are a lot of children around in the area who really do need sleep for good education, etc. So that was a particular concern, is the length of time, how often, etc. that we were going to be subjected to noise. and the the amount of persons involved who might be drinking and quite rowdy, perhaps on the way back from events, causing further disturbance. So I don't know whether there's anything else.
No, I think our representations are pretty much the same in that regard. But I do welcome the applicant, Mr. Langham's representation to say that things are going to get better. So that's very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Staunton. Thank you to all the objectors for presenting their representations. So Councillor Ransom, Councillor Popley, are you happy that I continue and ask others to ask questions?
Yes, I'm happy, Chair.
Yes, Chair, I'm happy too.
Thank you very much indeed. So may I come to Mr. Langley and to Mr. Smith? Mr. Langley, Mr. Langham, Mr. Smith, do you have any questions that you wish to ask the interested parties, that is the objectors, please?
No questions, Chair, but if I could just clarify a couple of points. On Councillor Popley's point about musicals, maybe I should declare an interest now. I'm retired as the General Secretary of the Musicians Union. That was my job until 2 years ago. So I've been heavily involved in all of the Licensing Act and the Live Music Act for many years. But yeah, much as I personally would like to see as much employment as possible for my former members, there's no plans to put on Mamma Mia or Les Miserables or anything like that. No, it's going to be, we can undertake that this will be much more low key, and we can talk to the licensing officers about that as things develop. Likewise, on Mr. Wild's point about the time limit when these events might end, there's no intention of taking these events up to 11 o'clock in the evening, to actually stretching it for the duration that's allowed by the Live Music Act. Obviously, it's going to depend on the event, but I can't imagine them going on late into the evening. And the times that you were mentioning, Mr. Weld, 9:30, 10 o'clock, seem reasonable to me. And I think we can actually discuss that with the licensing officer as these plans develop. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Could I ask Ms. Gilligan, please, our legal advisor, do you have any questions for the objectors, interested parties?
No, thank you, Chair. No questions.
Thank you. Can we come to Ms. Dowson, please, our licensing manager? Do you have any questions that you would like to ask the objectors, please, Ms. Dowson?
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Councillor Ransom, Councillor Popley, do you have any questions you wish to ask of the objectors? Councillor Ransom, please.
No, thank you, Chair. I've been satisfied with everything. Thank you with all the comments.
Councillor Popley, please, do you have any questions of the objectors?
No, Chair. Thank you. Satisfied again with the responses given.
Thank you very much. I will ask the interested parties now, the objectors, Mr. Wild, Mr. Hackworth, Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, do you wish to sum up your representations? Anyone?
Yes, please, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Smith and what he said there. That gives me some reassurance. I'll be perfectly honest, that does give me some reassurance. If there are the conditions that we discussed, if that's open to conversation, that's brilliant. Thank you, because ultimately you're a local business, and at the minute especially, I really appreciate what you're trying to do to sort of keep that going. So I have full sympathy with you, and I think you've satisfied those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wild. Mr. Hackworth, do you wish to sum up? Do you wish to sum up your presentation?
Again, I think it's been very helpful to be able to hear Mr. Langham and Mr. Smith about what they're proposing and their ideas, which I think have been helpful. I think thinking ahead, I think it would be helpful to continue this dialogue and to have good lines of communication between the hotel and local residents about their plans. And also, I think with Charnwood District Council, in terms of how we can communicate with them if there are any issues that arise which we might wish to give feedback about the hotel. And I do think the issues to do with transport needs to be taken further by the appropriate authorities. One of the objectors was John Kay, who is missing off his post as a parish councillor. He's going to pick this up, I think, with the parish council. But if Charnwood was also to take an interest in this, I think that will be helpful as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hackworth. Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, do you wish to sum up your representation, please?
I think we just really want to say a big thank you for being part of this this meeting and the communication that's allowed. I think it's quite reassuring to hear from Mr. Smith and from Mr. Langham. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I concur.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So we come now to item T, the applicant. I am going to ask Mr. Langham if he wishes to sum up his application, and I would also be happy to hear briefly from Mr. Smith also. So Mr. Langham, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think overall what we're looking to do is incorporate the community a lot more than previous management did. I think one thing that we're actively looking to start for a going forward period is involving the community and coming in and having a coffee morning and discussing things, and maybe even going through events lists and maybe utilizing some of the local talent involved in events. So I think as a whole, as the application, I think I'm quite confident. I'm happy that the representations and the complaints that we've received, we've had the feedback we have had from you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langham. Mr. Smith, do you wish to add anything, please?
No additional comments from me, Chair, but thank you for the opportunity to talk to some of the local community. I think it's been very useful.
It's a great pleasure. Very well. As chair, I confirm that the procedure has been followed and that all parties have had the opportunity to state their case and ask questions of the other parties present. I now need to check that all are content that this is the case. I will take silence as consent. You're all content that you have had the opportunity to state your case and ask questions of the other parties. Thank you. The hearing will now be adjourned and members of the committee will retire to deliberate privately and consider all the evidence before returning to this meeting to give a final determination of this application. Whilst retiring, members of the subcommittee will be accompanied only by the legal advisor, who will advise only on the law. The legal advisor will not make any recommendation as to the determination to be given. The legal advisor is Lisa Gilligan, whom we have already heard from. She will be accompanied by Nicola Ford, Principal Solicitor at Charnwood Borough Council, who will be present only to observe. We will now retire to separate to the breakout room. Over to you, please, Mr. Gudger.
And people that are waiting, if the YouTube link is still live, and there will be a slide showing that the meeting is being adjourned, and you can turn your microphones off, please, whilst, and come back in probably 10 or 15 minutes and keep checking when the meeting comes back. Thank you.
Hello? I'm actually not able to.
I was wondering if Councillor Forrest is Councillor Forrest back yet, or I'm happy to go back into the breakout room if it makes it easier and help her.
Are we all closed now? Are we concluded?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can close the rooms now.
Are you coming back? Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, if you can shut. Yeah, that's fine.
Don't know if Councillor Forrest is back yet. That's the only thing.
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear.
Okay, we'll close the rooms and we'll come back into the main.
Okay. Let me know, Matt, when you want me to stop sharing.
No, that's okay. You stop share now.
Okay.
Just double check. Hello?
Yep, everybody's back in the room now.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right. Hello? Can I confirm then that all parties are present, please? Right. Do we have all the officers, please? Mr. Gudger?
Yes, Chair, back in the room.
Thank you. Ms. Widdowson?
Yes, I'm back in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Conway?
Yes, I'm back in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gilligan and Ms. Ford?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Gilligan? Right. Ms. Dowson?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Cluer, I beg your pardon.
No worries, Chair. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Mr. Langham and Mr. Smith, please?
I'm here. Mr. Smith had to go to another meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Langham. And do we have Mr. Wild, Mr. Hackworth, and Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, please?
Yes, we're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just double check? Lisa Gilligan, her picture is frozen on the Zoom. Is she in the room, please?
I believe we've lost her.
Yeah, we've just lost her actually.
I think we're going to have to wait until we get Miss Gilligan back, please.
Yes, we have to have
I'm
back in the room.
so sorry. Sorry to keep you waiting, ladies and gentlemen, but we have to have our solicitor, Miss Gilligan, with us, the legal advisor, because she is going to read out the subcommittee's decision. So if you'll just bear with us, please.
Madam Chair, I can see that she's coming back into the meeting room, so she's coming back in, so that's good news. Thank you.
Miss Gilligan, Lisa?
Yes, I can only apologise. My computer just died, and so I don't know what happened there, but I'm back now, so I do apologise.
That's perfectly all right. I have checked that all parties are present, and you've now confirmed that you are with us again. So as our legal advisor, I am going to ask you now, please, to read out the subcommittee's decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. And as I say, once again, I apologise for a brief departure. Thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and the Licensing Committee hope that you felt it was a positive opportunity to engage in dialogue with all relevant parties. In their deliberations, the Licensing Committee have focused at the fore on the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives. They're also mindful of and very conscious of the deregulation afforded to licensed premises by the Live Music Act 2012. In reaching their decision, the licensing committee heard the issues which had been faced and were feared by interested parties and local residents, and they shared their concerns in relation to the potential for public nuisance. The committee were encouraged by the evidence they heard on behalf of the applicant, and in particular the commitment to improving the situation for local residents moving forward. In considering all the evidence heard and all the written representations submitted, the licensing committee was satisfied that the application to grant a variation would not undermine the licensing objectives. Therefore, in granting the application, they do feel it is necessary to ensure the prevention of public nuisance that 2 additional conditions are added to the licence. And those conditions are, firstly, and these are both aimed at ensuring the prevention of public nuisance. Firstly, that a noise impact assessment of the licensed activities at the premises must be carried out to the satisfaction of the licensing authority, and proposed steps to prevent the noise must, if necessary, also be submitted for inclusion within the operating schedule. A further condition, which was offered by Mr. Smith, will read that there are no fireworks or pyrotechnics shall be used other than with the prior consent of the licensing authority. In conclusion, the licensing committee would like to urge all parties to continue with a good line of communication and positive dialogue, whether that be between local residents and the applicant, and also involving both the licensing authority, in particular the environmental protection team. Although due to the deregulation of live music, the licensing committee are not permitted to, at this stage, impose conditions on the licence which would limit the relaxation afforded by the Act. If, in the event of problems moving forward, parties wish to make an application for a review, at any subsequent review hearing, the licensing committee are permitted to impose any conditions which they feel necessary to deal with the problems which interested parties are faced. So whilst ever there are limitations at this stage, in the event of a future review, there would be further discretion which would be engaged by the licensing committee. And that concludes the committee's decision.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gilligan. So the decision will be confirmed in writing to all the parties at this hearing and all other persons who have made representations previously.
Chair, I think the licensing manager is trying to gain your attention.
Ms. Dowson, please.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to check within the public nuisance schedule that offered by the applicant at page 34 of the committee pack. It states about music or fireworks outside. They must submit their request. Is that condition to be removed?
Well, I will come back to Ms. Gilligan, but yes, because we heard from Mr. Smith earlier that the directors of the premises had decided that they would remove fireworks from their schedule. It was a sort of voluntary condition, if you like, and we've taken that as a condition.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, it saves me going back to Mr. Langham and it makes it official that it's removed during the committee hearing.
Is that all right for you, Ms. Dowson?
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will say again that this decision will be confirmed in writing to all the parties at this hearing and all other persons who have made representations previously. I would like to thank you all for your attendance, and I am closing the meeting at 5 minutes past 4, 16:05. Thank you all. Thank you.